Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's always a joy to see, all of you. I consider readers as kind of part of my extended family, so it's kind of neat. Like every year, every couple of years, I get to see some of you, and others I see all the time. Today, we'll be talking about my latest book, Iced in Paradise, a Leilani Santiago Hawaii mystery. And I wanted to kind of explain why, because I'm a California girl, why am I writing about Hawaii? And just the genesis and how I was able to do research and other things about it. Um, so last year, many of you were here for the final Mas Arai mystery, Hiroshima Boy. And I also, during that same year, with my friend Heather Lindquist, we co-wrote a book, Life After Manzanar. So it was kind of a heavy year for me personally, as well as kind of our larger community. And so I needed to go to like a happy place, and I was thinking, where could I go? What could I write about? So for me and my husband, one of those happy places is Hawaii, specifically Kauai, the Garden Isle. And I know we have at least one person who is from Kauai. Anyone else from Kauai here? Because I need to talk to you. Anybody from Hawaii here originally? Anyone who's gone to Hawaii? Yeah. Anybody who wants to go to Hawaii? So my husband and I have gone to Kauai um, often, and it's like the aisle, the garden aisle is so green and like a place where, and kind of less touristy than the other islands, and one of our favorites. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can like vicariously experience Hawaii through my characters. And that's kind of how this mystery, kind of the seed of it, how it first started. So in terms of other happy things for me, and my mother is from Hiroshima, and we would go to Japan on a regular basis. And the things, and of course, as a kid, you're always going in the heat of summer, right? Hotter than heck. And so the thing that I enjoyed so much about going to Japan was the kakigori, the shaved ice, and it and there's places here where I just recently went to the okonomiyaki place, and they have these ices that are, big as someone's head and filled with little mochis and matcha, and it's just really wonderful. So and then at home, in the summertime, we had one of those manual snow cone makers, the ones that had the little discs that you fill it up with water and put it in your in your freezer, and then you kind of shave it. It takes a really long time. And now I have a very cheap one where you throw in ice cubes, right? And it makes a lot of noise. It makes really awful snow cones, but sometimes you just need to have it. And apparently, from that kakigori way, that was in Japan way back when during the Heian era, it apparently found its way to Hawaii from Japanese immigrants who kind of brought this kind of treat, this sweet and very cold, refreshing treat to the plantations of Hawaii. So that's how people say that shave ice, right? It's not shaved, it's shave ice. Or if you're from the Big Island, what do you call it? Ice shave. Got over there. And now they're starting in Southern California, they're starting to have some good shave ice here and there. Maybe not as good as the islands, but they're getting better. So this particular place, Hang Loose, is in Glendale, and they're pretty good, and they're very, very crowded right now. Let's see. Okay, so when I was thinking about writing a place set in Hawaii, I kind of announced it. Some of you are on my Facebook, we're Facebook friends. I also have an author page for Facebook. And one of my readers, she saw that I was thinking of writing something in Hawaii, and she was really, really nervous for me. She's very concerned, and specifically about pigeon. Like, what, could I mean, I live here. Can I master pigeon? And she was just saying so many mainline people, so many outsiders butcher pigeon, and I was very concerned about that too. I think in terms of the similarities of like my Mas Arai series and my Ellie Rush and this one, there's a few things that are similar. One thing is they're usually something related to family. They're family mysteries. Even Mas, in the beginning, he's estranged from his daughter, and his friends have become his family. But as you go through the series, there's more reconciliation in the family. And then you find out that he thought he was so distant and separated from his family back in Hiroshima, but it really wasn't the case. As you go through the whole series, you kind of learn this. And another thing is language. Mas speaks in dialect. I grew up in a bilingual household. Japanese was probably my first language. And and being the oldest child, I was used to kind of interpreting things for my family, for my parents. And, you're constantly thinking in different ways. And when I went to Stanford, that's when I probably encountered became good friends with people from Hawaii. That's, a lot of those students, they came from Punahou and Kamehameha. And so I was kind of learning, okay, Kamehameha, you have to have native blood in you. And then Punahou, later I would find out that some of my classmates was also classmates with a person named Barry Obama. And of course, at that time, we didn't know who he was. He was just a kid going to school in Occidental College. But later, when I was reading articles in the LA Times about President Obama's Hawaii upbringing, they were quoting people from my freshman dorm. And I was going, oh, that's really interesting. And then, of course, Punahou is more exclusive, right? And then when I worked at the Raf Shimpo, one of our reporters was from McKinley High School, and he would talk very bitterly about the Punahou people. So, and also just learning more about class consciousness through all these friends. Also, while I was at Stanford, I would notice how my friends would code switch. They'd talk pidgin to their friends, in our circle. But then when it was like an economics class or an engineering class, they would switch over, right, to the Haole speak. And it was just like really fascinating to me. So that was my kind of early initiation to like Hawaii life. Another thing, let's see. Well, I'll just keep going here. So, and then here, so back to my reader who was very concerned. So she was explaining to me about Pidgin. It's an actual language now. And she sent me photos from different museums, and she was quoting from different writers. And one of them, she mentioned Loisan Yamanaka. And I was like, Loisan Yamanaka, that's one of my favorite Japanese American writers. And a couple years ago, USC brought her out, and I was actually able to meet her. So, and her prose is full of pidgin, and I would highly recommend you pick up one of her books if you're interested. But I think the last thing I will say about writing about Hawaii, it's one of these places where my husband can go visit, and the shuttle driver can look back at us and say, hey, you from around here? It's like, no, we're from California, But I think just the fact that it feels like a safe place, at least from a Japanese American from California, to go over there. It's not a place where people say, who are you? Go back to where you came from. I think just the sense of belonging that many of us feel when we arrive in the islands is something that is a source of comfort. You know, I wanted to write about a place like that. Okay, so how does this Californian with a limited budget write about Hawaii? Um, you know, people often say, "Oh, you just wrote about Kauai because you want to go over there and do research." I would love to if I had the budget, but I will be going to Hawaii for, you know, hopefully this will be, you know, a series, at least 3 books. But so I had to be creative and do some research in Hawaii. I mean, in California. And interesting enough, there's such a close relationship between, especially Southern California and Hawaii. One thing, my character's father is was a pro surfer, and there's at least 3 surfing museums in Southern California, and they're really fabulous. It's so interesting. There's one up in Santa Cruz as well. And you all know that Duke Kahanamoku was the father of surfing, and he was an excellent swimmer as well from Hawaii. And then he came, but you know, a lot of how people kind of found out about his talent and about surfing was when he had come to California to swim, as well as there had been a big incident. This was like, I think, 1912. And, you know, the surfboards were huge back then. And I think in the 1920s, there had been an incident in Newport Beach where some people were drowning in the ocean, and Duke went out, swam, and he also surfed, and he saved all these people. And people became more, I think surfing became more on people's consciousness in California. And of course, through various commercial interests, the surfboards became really developed here in California, which is interesting. And I think because of a California state announcement that surfing is our official sport. I don't know if you all knew that. But this one was in the Huntington Beach Museum. There's one in Oceanside, and here you could see, you know, Bethany Hamilton, the surfer who lost her limb due to a shark. You know, they have the surfboard that she that had gone through that shark attack, and they even have her bikini that she was wearing at the time that was designed by this designer named Aaron Chang. You can't really see this very well, but this one, actually the surf museum that was the most helpful to me, because as a mystery writer, you're always looking for clues. You're looking for something kind of unusual. And this museum just had a whole bunch of different kind of surfboards on display. And I noticed that one of them, or a couple of them, had something very unusual on them. They had a swastika. And it was called actually the swastika brand. And it was created by Pacific System Homes. They actually built homes. But during the Depression, one of the young, I guess the owner's son who really liked surfing was thinking, oh, hey, why don't we make surfboards in addition to build homes? So, and then the swastika at that particular time, before World War II, really meant peace. It was a positive symbol, right? And in fact, if you go into the old Nishihonganji temple, you'll see the reverse swastika there on the railings, because the meaning before, you know, many people say Hitler, he kind of appropriated that symbol of peace and good fortune and a lot of things and made it into something very evil. So, but that echo swastika, that's really interesting. So that is kind of in the book. So that became, and because of that, it's funny like how certain clues will lead to the birth of characters. So because of that clue, one of the characters is Jewish, and this sounds weird, but I never had a major character being Jewish. So that's how he made his way into this particular book set in Kauai. And of course, here in California, I had done a book on the flower market here in downtown Los Angeles. So, that's one of my go-to places to get leis. And I'm thinking I'm going to be doing more research on flowers and leis in the future. But this is something that is in so many of our communities throughout Southern California. And food, actually, the one of the chicken long rice and the beef stew was from Bob's Hawaiian, and that's actually from the time Edwin Ushiro, the artist who did the cover. He's originally from Maui, but that photo's from our meeting when we were talking about the illustration. That place in Gardena is totally down home. I don't know how many of you, if you ever want a down home like Hawaiian experience, go to Bob's. I think it was a former Shakey's, is that right? I don't know but Sizzler. Okay, it was a Sizzler, yeah. And then this was from just this past week. We had a birthday party for Leilani at Vroman's bookstore, and of course, Ice in Paradise. You need a paradise cake from King's Hawaiian. I'm sorry, we don't have a cake for you today, but you get to look at one. I just wish there was one closer to me in Pasadena, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I think in all of our lives, the different potlucks we go to, there's something usually Hawaiian. There's a spam musubi. There's something there that's actually from Hawaii, the Hawaiian culture. Okay, so shave ice. So how am I going to do this research on shave ice without going to the islands? Luckily, there's this Brian shave ice in Sawtelle, and they were so nice. Luckily, shave ice, it's not that complicated. It's pretty basic, but still, I got to ask all these questions about the shave ice machine. How old is it? I mean, how much does it cost? Where do I get it? How do you get it serviced? And the proprietor also showed me the ice blocks, how they create it. And so that really came in handy. More things from Brian's shave ice. Okay. And then, so that led to the birth of Leilani Santiago. And I know Dr. Takasugi's here. One of his family members has the last name Santiago. I really wanted a character who was mixed. My last young female character, Ellie Rush, was a Japanese American, and she was white. She was of mixed race. But I really wanted another kind of addition. So that's why I decided to add Filipino to the mix here. So she's Pina, Japanese, and white. And I think also the mixing to me was just a sign, like we live in such tumultuous times, especially in terms of race relations right now. But just to write about people that, within their families are dealing with a mix of ethnicities. It doesn't go smoothly all the time, but we're still family. So I wanted to kind of embrace that. I'll talk a little bit about Leilani, and then I'm going to read a brief section here, and then I'll talk about what's next and take your questions. So Leilani has gone off to Seattle for school, for college, and she unfortunately can't make it. So she drops out and she's working. But then she, the way I kind of describe this book is it's kind of like Little Women in Hawaii with a dead body. So Leilani is the oldest of out of four girls. She has three younger sisters. But Leilani is the oldest, and her mom, who is Haole, she's white, she tells her Leilani she has MS, multiple sclerosis. So Leilani just feels like a responsibility to come back home to Kauai. They live in Waimea, and to help with the family business, which of course is a shave ice shack. And she is a little bit estranged from her father, Tommy, who is a trainer of pro surfers. He also is an entrepreneur. He has several like surf-related businesses, and he comes to back to Waimea with his young charge, who's a golden boy. He's this surfer from San Clemente, and his name's Luke Hightower. Of course, what happens, I'm sorry I'm spoiling this a little bit for you, but you probably could figure out what's going to happen. But Leilani, she discovers a body in the shave ice shack, and it happens to be Luke. And because of that, Leilani's father is kind of implicated. So as a result of that, so there's another female character in this family, and her name's Bachan. So who's Bachan? Grandma. And grandma has to put her house up for a second mortgage to get the money to kind of help Tommy. So I'm going to read you a section from that. During our 6-block drive home, Bachan holds her purse shut, as if someone is going to be grabbing its contents. Your Ji-chan when worked so hard for that house, all his military pay and everything. You didn't have to do it, I want to say to her, but that would be a lie. There's no other alternatives for the Santiagos. When Bachan gets home, she starts rummaging in the kitchen, rearranging our mixing bowls, cleaning our cracked tile counters. We hear some crowing in the backyard a few feet away. What that? Sophie, this is one of the little sisters, comes into the kitchen. That's Jimin, Bachan, she explains. What that, Jimin? It's her rooster from the North Shore. I sit at the kitchen table with my bare feet on one of the chairs. My sore ankle is starting to smart, and I've placed a bag of frozen edamame on it. I no like one booga rooster in my house. He's not inside the house, he's outside. I don't care 1 mile away, he's out. Bachan picks up the largest knife that we have in the house, a huge Chinese cleaver that Mama Lu loaned us that we never returned, and heads out the back door. No, Bachan, Sophie shrieks, chasing her. I cover my eyes. This is one mess I will not even try to clean up. No rooster is slaughtered that night, though not for Bachan's lack of trying. Turns out Jimin is actually smarter than he looks and expertly dodges Bachan's cleaver hacks. We do have a bird for dinner that night, but it's one from the poultry section at Big Save Market. Mom makes her signature chicken long rice, a gingerly soup with clear cellophane noodles. All 5 of us are quiet around the table, elbow to elbow, as we slurp and swallow. After dinner, the girls go off and watch a samurai movie with Bachan in her room, and I help Mom wash the dishes and put them away. I wipe a chawan bowl with a dish towel Court had embroidered with orange koi. What did you see in him? I ask Mom. Her hand scrubbing another bowl in the dishwater, she turns to me a bit lost. Dad, he was hot for one thing. She rinses the chawan and gives it to me. Yuck, Mom. Mom was in college when she spent a summer in Kauai and fell in love. That love resulted in, surprise, me, then fast-tracked their relationship and led Mom to drop out of Cal State Long Beach and move here, much to her parents' objections. You remember watching your dad surf? I do. He looked like a superhero, Aquaman, with his wet long hair plastered down his back, his muscular legs controlling the board. That caught my eye. But it was his pure heart that got me. Huh? This was unexpected. You've seen one other man with a pure heart? Mom has spent most of her life in Kauai than in California, and sometimes a pigeon can't help but come out at times like these. Sometimes I think Dad hates me, even after everything I do to help. Leilani, no, he loves you. She shakes the excess soap from another chawan. Just you two the same. You both rather give stink eye than a smile. It's true that I'm not one of those naturally happy people like Court. That's her best friend. Do you know that he watched every one of your volleyball games? Nuh-uh. Kelly took videos and sent them over to me to show your dad. No, he never say. Dad didn't want you to know. Make a fuss. For reals? This was hard to believe. He's probably more Japanese than Pinoy. Got that strict Bachan spirit in him. You just like him, so can't show off. What Mom is saying somehow makes sense, that it's not about only me, but the family. The family is part of me. Mom stops washing, looks me straight in the eye, her dripping hands raised as if she's preparing to do some surgery. I don't want you to sacrifice your life for us, for me. After all of this is over, and it will be over, Leilani, I want you to go back to Seattle, be with your boyfriend, and follow your dreams. I stay quiet and put my weight on my good leg. I have no idea what my dreams could be. So that's section. So what's next? I spoke to Tim Miller about Chicago. I'm working on a historical standalone right now, set in Chicago in 1944. And some of that was based from my research from Life After Manzanar. So we'll see what happens with that. I've written a lot about nonfiction about history, and I've written like the Mas Arai novels are kind of more contemporary novels that integrate history into them, but this is the first time I'm really writing a novel that's a historical, so we'll see if I could pull it off. The other photo is of Ninoshima, which is where that was the island. Actually, the island, you're seeing, this is the school for kids. It's kind of like an orphanage. And then you're seeing another island in the distance. But anyway, that Hiroshima boy, I received good news. I can't put it on Facebook yet because it's not official, but it will be translated into Japanese by Shogakukan. That's the same publisher that had translated Gasa Gasa Girl and Snakeskin Shamisen. So I'm really excited. I'm kind of surprised because for an American to write something that's set in Hiroshima, that's kind of hard. You know, I thought it'd be hard for Japanese readers to accept, but they obviously are accepting it, so that makes me happy. And then there might be some other exciting news to report on that front. But you have to subscribe to my newsletter on my website. Because you guys, besides my family and friends, you'll be the next to know if it ever happens. But another thing on the Mas Arai front, there's going to be a short story called The Last Hibakusha that's going to be out in the Mystery Writers of America. Their anniversary actually is 1945. That's when they started. So they're doing the short story collection that'll be out in April called Deadly Anniversaries. So they invited some writers. I guess Lee Child is probably one of the most famous ones in the group, to write about an anniversary. So it's like a murder mystery around an anniversary. So I decided I would do the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. And so it's kind of projecting ahead because that's not until August 2020. So, but I had to do I did a lot of research around Koyasan because that's where the eternal flame is set, but it is located. But that's about it. Let me take a few questions. Thank you very much.
I have a mic.
Okay, so any questions? No questions. Oh, there's Barbara has a question.
It's not actually a question. Surfing is going to be at the Olympics in Japan for the first time.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that cool? I have a Japanese surfer in my book, and just for fun, how many of you watched Terrace House? So I made a character like Guy, the surfer, although I made him a total pothead. So that was really fun. Any other comments or questions?
What about Audible?
This one I don't know. So have you listened to the Mas Arai books? So 7 of them, all 7 have been on Audible. I don't know, they haven't picked up the Ellie Rush books or this one yet. I hope they do, because it'd be a great job for a young actress, you know. And that's what's really cool about these audiobooks, because a lot of for us who write Asian American characters, now they're starting to get Asian American actors to read them. The gentleman who read mine, the Mas Arai, is named Brian Nishi, and he lives here in Los Angeles. He's Hapa, but who cares? It doesn't matter when you're reading an audiobook. And he actually lived in Japan for a while. So he was very, very Japanese. Like, he would email me a lot, like in the first book, there's a magazine in Japan called Shine. And then he writes me, he goes, is it Shine or is it Shine? Like Shine, like to die. I was going, I didn't even think of Shine. No, it's Shine. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I would love for it to be an audiobook. One thing I didn't explain is there's a direct tie from the Ellie Rush bicycle cop movies to Leilani Santiago. Leilani and Ellie Rush's respective grandmothers are sisters. So I'm going to have Ellie Rush and Grandma Toma. I don't know who else I'm going to have. I love Ellie's best friend, Nay, the Cambodian American. I don't know. Maybe I'll have her go to Hawaii too. But they're all joined forces. It's I name a lot of my characters after people I know. And like with the Ellie Rush, her mother's maiden name is Toma. And I go, oh, I guess it's Okinawa. That's a very Okinawan American name, So I go, I guess I have to make them Okinawan, So it's kind of been interesting. I did, because there's a lot of Filipino characters here, so I had to name one Mabalot, of course, after Linda. But this is Andy Mabalot, and he's a police officer in Kauai. But he's a good guy. He's one of Leilani's friends. And there's another character, the patriarch in the Santiago family is named Faustino. So I don't know where that came from. So you might be in the book too. Any other comments or questions? Yes, JK. Okay, so there's a program out right now, the AMC's Terror, Infamy, and it's, if you're not familiar with that particular, like American Horror Story, it's like, they call it American Horror Story, but each season is a different storyline. And this year's storyline is about the incarceration of Japanese Americans from Terminal Island. And they first of all, there was a call out to all Asian American writers to be part of the writers' room. So one of my my young friends, much younger than me, I love young people because they're so ambitious, and they go, Naomi, you should put your name in. It's like, what am I going to be doing in a writer's room for, for a Hollywood TV show? I've never really done much in that arena, but but then I start talking to myself, Naomi, you should go for it. You should just do it. So I sent like my resume, I sent it off to them. And I really wasn't paying attention. There were like 2 names of people I needed to send it to. And I think I referred to one person as a mister, and it was a woman. It was terrible, very terrible. But anyway, but they, wrote me back, and I was declined. That was fine. And this was totally unrelated to that incident. Once they were doing more research, this researcher who had met the photo editor for the Terminal Island book contacted me and started asking me questions about Terminal Island, so the first time she contacted me, she's very great. She's a great researcher, but as we were going along, the second time she contacted me, I go, well, can you at least, I don't get any money from the sales of this book, but can you at least mention Terminal Island, this book, in the credits? And then the third time, I was going, wait a minute, she's getting money for this, I need to ask for money. So, anyway, by trying to advocate for myself, I became like a regular, consultant. So people, we need to advocate for ourselves. No, we really do. We really do. Because we have, now with all these diverse stories, we have a certain know-how, and so I was, so this researcher, whenever, it was more for the writer's room, so when issues came up, they would just email me, and I would email them back, very quickly. If I didn't know the answers, I would just contact, someone who had been incarcerated. Was there a power plant? And, they would ask very specific questions, And then I guess it worked out for them because they asked me to read all the scripts. So I read all the scripts and some of the things I commented on, were ignored. But other things, there's actually, I don't know much, I'm not Buddhist, but there's certain things that kind of alerted me. I go, I don't know if that's real, because they're talking about the paranormal. So that's when I referred them to like an expert like Duncan Williams to kind of come in and, kind of, because it's kind of dicey when you're dealing with religion, right, and issues of faith. But they did such great in-depth, they really wanted to get things correct. They were even asking me when they disseminated the loyalty oath questionnaire, like what was it, how was it attached, and all those kind of things. I had always viewed it just digitally. I don't know, JK, what would you say on the loyalty oath? What did it, well, no, how did it physically, like the pages? Like, we don't think about those kind of things, right? And so many people, that generation, those people who are adults are now gone, right? It's just the kids. So, luckily, like questions like that, like on Facebook, in fact, I'm like, so Eric Muller is my friend. So Eric, this is for this TV show. How were they attached? And, he kind of explained because he had gone to National Archives and seen them. So, but they were looking at things that in depth. So I was just a consultant, not on the story, but more just historically. I don't know if they have a scene of a Obon in camp. I don't know if that's come out yet. I don't think it has. But there was like certain things. Did it come out, the Obon one? Okay. Did they have lanterns there? See, that was one of the issues I had. I go, and I'm sending them all these like images, like, because all that was used were kind of flags type stuff, but I think visually, right, they needed to make it more interesting because I don't think any camp had lanterns, But, it's just, it was really interesting, and they did due diligence. A Chinese-American man was the showrunner, and I think that made a big difference. They had all the actors were of Japanese ancestry, and they had people in the writers' room who were of Japanese descent. It's interesting. They got some playwrights because this whole streaming era. They need writers, and playwrights are perfect because they're dealing with dialogue. So there's like some mixed race playwrights they got from New York to be part of the writers' room. And the director of the first episode and the second one, he is of Japanese ancestry. So I think it was a real thrill for him to participate. And then when you were here, Jackie, were you? When they had the screening here. Oh, they had a screening here, and then the showrunner mentioned, they were starting to talk about hibakusha, atomic bomb survivors, because it was in August. And then the showrunner happened to mention that the director's, one of his ancestors was a hibakusha. And then I, emailed him, and he said it was his grandfather. So anyway, he lives in New York, so, he's not part of this tight-knit Japanese American community. But it's just so cool that, in a way, like the separations between us geographically, we became closer through that particular project. And another thing that's super interesting is they filmed it in Vancouver, right? Because that's where they film so many things. It's inexpensive. But this is the interesting thing. So they made up for that show a fictional camp, right? That there were a lot of trees, just like the landscape of Vancouver. But they used a racetrack and another location where Japanese Canadians were incarcerated. And some of the extras that were participating in that, they said that it was their, father or grandparent, someone in their family had been incarcerated at that racetrack. So that's kind of interesting because it's like Canadians, like even though it wasn't shot here, there's still a connection, right? So I thought that was super interesting. How are we doing on time? Okay, any other questions? Yes, hi.
Get you a mic.
Have you ever researched the occupation, the early occupation when we went to Japan? There's a lot of interesting stories there.
I did some research for the George Aratani biography. George Aratani, yeah, and not.
We were one of the first ones there.
I would love to talk to you. Yeah, I did. I'm always fascinated because my own parents were in Japan during World War II, right? So I'm really interested in Nisei that were in Japan during that whole period of time. There's a book, what is it called? JK, maybe you could, do you remember that exchange of letters between a Nisei woman and her family? She was in Japan. It was Dear Mie, yeah. Miye, right? And those letters were really interesting. It's a little different than the occupation. It was like, I don't know if it included, I don't know the time span, but there was another guy for the Aratani book that had been part of the occupation that I had talked to. So I think I agree with you. I think that's a super fascinating era. And I'd love to talk to you more about it. Have you been interviewed?
Have you been interviewed? Interviewed?
Has anybody asked you questions about your story?
About the history, yeah, I think.
About your story? She's been interviewed? Okay. Is that available here at the Japanese American National Museum? Or maybe Densho? I don't know. We'll find out, yeah. But it's so important for us to get these stories down, yeah. What do you think?
Oh, no, you're good. Anyone else?
Anybody else? Thanks for coming. I guess I'll be out there. Well, Joy
Yeah,
will.
so thank you so much, and thank you for being here. We're so lucky to have you